So I got one for you today. We're going to take a little bit of a diversion.
A diversion? Although I don't think it's too much of a diversion from what we were just talking about in terms of controlling my home from my Stream Deck, is it?
It's in the same vein, but I would like to talk to you today about Home Assistant. So we've talked about Stream Deck automation in the past. I think we've talked a little bit about home automation, so smart locks and what else? Outlets, things like that. But I was getting kind of annoyed. So I live a multi-PC life. I have a MacBook and then I have 2 Windows laptops that are here for work as well. So I spend my day going back and forth between 2 Windows laptops and a MacBook. And when I'm on those devices, I want things to be the same, particularly when it comes to peripherals. So that's pretty easy to set up as far as things like my mouse and keyboard. My mouse and keyboard, I'll go into a USB switch, and I've just got a little button on there. I hit the button on the top, and it switches and cycles between 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just switching between PCs that, all have the same USB cord plugged into them. But what was really irking me that it wasn't the same was my Stream Deck. So I like that consistency of the same buttons being in the same places and being able to execute all of the same actions along the way. So what I was doing was on my Mac, I have a whole bunch of HomeKit controlled devices, and those HomeKit controlled devices or my non-HomeKit devices that are exposed to HomeKit via Homebridge, I was writing shortcuts and then exposing those shortcuts as .app files, as just apps that I could run, and then just from the Stream Deck, launching those apps and letting things get to where they needed to be. That didn't help me at all in Windows land. Like there's no button on the Stream Deck in Windows land that says, hey, run this Apple shortcut. And there's not even a REST API or anything like that you can call, or at least not one that I could find that was going to make any of this work. So I kind of needed a new way to interact consistently with all of my devices from a Stream Deck across multiple computing platforms. So in my head, that meant having a little bit of glue to hold it all together. And I know in the past, you've mentioned Home Assistant, particularly when you write dashboards that consume terabytes of data a month on your data plan and take you down and pull you under.
I haven't had that happen again, though. FYI,
well, that's good.
It only happened once.
That's all good. So I went down the path of doing Home Assistant, and I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it, being that you're a Home Assistant aficionado and you're doing it. I kind of wanted to walk through maybe a little bit about what I did along the way, what I discovered, and maybe some things that I am missing in my life because I just don't know that they exist yet.
All right. And hopefully I don't let you down with my Home Assistant aficionado-ness. I'm going to make up words today too.
We shall see. I hope you don't. I have high hopes for you.
I have gone down this route. I think about 2 years ago, I switched everything over from. I was using the Smart Things with Samsung, and I switched everything over to Home Assistant. I think it was about 2 years ago now, and I actually put a couple tablets in the house where we used to have alarm panels and hooked up our alarm to Home Assistant, or our sensors, rather, our home sensors for our alarm to Home Assistant, which I'm still working on 2 years later. But it is absolutely an interesting path to go down. There's a lot of things you can do with it. I will say, because I've always been Smart Things and Home Assistant, I have not paid much attention to Apple HomeKit. Like, I get all my devices, so they tend to work with not HomeKit, and I don't really care if they work with HomeKit or not. So that might be where we differ a little bit, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, your questions, and your whatever else you have on Home Assistant?
Well, when it comes to, I'm hoping the whole Matter thread thing bakes out someday, and this all kind of gets fixed, and you don't have to worry about
so nice.
an ecosystem for a thing. But for the most part, my philosophy is everything should be in HomeKit because that meets the wife acceptance factor. It's at a significant threshold, and my wife can use things in there. But then there's just other stuff that I want to do with it that maybe my wife doesn't want to do. So, we're both in Florida, so we have sprinklers in our yards. I like to be able to control my sprinkler from my phone, kind of thing. Like, it would be nice to see the weather and control the schedule on my sprinkler from the same place that I'm turning lights on and off. So that's where I need kind of a little bit more glue to kind of bring it together and make things work along the way. So I think I set out on this path because I had a couple distinct goals. Like I said, the first one being I need to execute home automations from my Stream Deck, like very specifically from my Stream Deck, and I need them to run the same across multiple platforms. So that means I need a Stream Deck plugin that's going to work on both Mac and Windows, and then let me do things against it. And Home Assistant kind of fills that gap for me and gets things to where they need to be. So I can turn on my camera and turn on my lights, and I can do other nifty things like see temperatures. And like you said, sensors are kind of first party citizens within Home Assistant. So you do get some really cool capabilities in there. So for everything that I want to be able to do from my Stream Deck, so like if I look down, I've got my camera, like my webcam here. I have my key light over on the side there, so I can turn my key light on and turn my key light off, and that's over on a smart plug. I can control my fan, which sits up above me, like my ceiling fan, and my can lights. And then I can also take a look at things like the temperature and the speed of the fan. Am I rotating at 100%, 50%? Things like that. And then Home Assistant itself, I think the really cool thing about it is beyond being able to do all this stuff from my Stream Deck, like I found there's some added benefits to it with the dashboards that are built into it. So I've got a bunch of old Kindle Fires laying around the house that we bought for the kids a couple years ago. They're like older Kindle Fire HD8s or things like that. They're like $50-$60 devices, I think, today, if you went and bought them. So I took those and threw an app called Fully Kiosk on those. I don't know if you're familiar with Fully Kiosk.
I am. That's what I have running on mine. Yeah.
So it's an Android app that lets you turn an Android device into basically a lockdown kiosk mode kind of thing, where you can point it to a URL and then lock down to that URL. And because Home Assistant is all just web-based, but it's all running locally, like on a web server locally within your home, then it's nice and easy to take Fully and point it just at a URL and say, hey, display this thing. So now I've got a couple of tablets laying around the house that anybody can just pick up and unlock, and they can control lights and see cameras. And, if the sprinklers happen to be running and they need to shut them off because they want to go outside and do something, like you can just do that all from the tablet. And it's just a slider or a button click away or a button press away, which has been super kind of nifty to just see it all working. And then added benefit of Fully Kiosk, if folks ever go down this path, there's a free version and there's a paid version. The paid version gives you access to the sensors on your Android devices as well. So you can turn your tablets into things like cameras within your house too. So if you were to take that tablet and say mount it to a wall and plug it in so it was there all the time as a kind of a smart home control center, you can have it do things like unlock the tablet when you walk into it and be able to view the camera on that tablet as like a native security camera in your house without having to go out and purchase anything extra. So super, super cool. It's definitely like not an easy tool to get on board with, though. It was some trials and tribulations to get it all running.
I didn't know you were going to do that, or I would have sent you the videos I just posted in the chat and Discord. about wall-mounted dashboards for Home Assistant with a Fire tablet and fully kiosk, and he will go through and walk you through all of that stuff. So you can just watch the YouTube video and follow along.
Not the kiosk part. I think the kiosk part is easy. That's configuring an app. That like Home Assistant
it was the whole
itself
Home Assistant stuff
is a bit of a beast to get up and running. It's not like sitting down with one of the dinguses, be it Amazon smart home device or doing HomeKit through hey whatever kind of thing, or even Google Home, anything like that. Like it's a bit of a geek's kind of paradise. I would say it's not for mere mortals the way it's set up. I don't think I've ever played around with as much YAML as I have with this. And I've done some pretty complicated things in Kubernetes. And I was like, this goes above and beyond. Like I've broken so much stuff just by having bad YAML and lack of a linter.
Yes, I would agree with that. Like Home Assistant in and of itself, and that was one thing I was like on the fence of, to your point, Amazon or Home Assistant or Wink or one of those where it is geared, I would say, more towards just normal consumers. They want to plug it in and click a few buttons and get going. Home Assistant has significantly more work involved in getting it set up and configured, especially depending on which way you went. So I don't know which way you went when you set up Home Assistant. Mine is running on a Raspberry Pi 4. So I set up the whole Raspberry Pi with Home Assistant, and then I had to go figure out the right Z-Wave and Zigbee USB adapters that I wanted to use with the Raspberry Pi and would work with the Raspberry Pi and all the devices I have. And then above and beyond that, I actually went out and bought a Power over Ethernet hat for my Raspberry Pi so that I could power the Raspberry Pi off of my unified network switch that's PoE. So theoretically, I can do a remote reboot anytime on my Home Assistant by just cycling the PoE on this particular port on my switch.
Gotcha. So if anybody wants to go down this path, and I didn't know this when I started, there's a couple installation paths for Home Assistant, and the functionality that you get on each installation path varies. So if you install on a Raspberry Pi, you get one set of functionality. If you install via Docker container, you get a kind of similar, but a subset of functionality within
definitely
that.
More limited.
So you get more flexibility and control because, hey, it's a container, right? Containers are nice, super easy and simple. I haven't found anything that I'm missing. So I went with the container install. And unlike you, I don't need to have Zigbee or anything like that. Like all my devices are already somehow smart home connected, or they're already connected to a web service someplace. So that could be like my security cameras are all just Arlo cameras. My smart outlets tend to be TP-Link, like Casa kinds of things.
Got it.
Sensors like temperature sensors, motion sensors, those are all tied to my thermostat, which is an Ecobee, and all that stuff just kind of ties together and comes in. So it wasn't so much that I needed to run Home Assistant as a smart home hub. I just needed it to be like an aggregator for all the web services and let me come in and click the buttons and do all the things with it.
Got it. See, and mine is my hub. Like 90% of my smart home house will work if I lose internet because everything is connected locally. Like my doorbell is a local connection, locally connected. All my Zigbee, Z-Wave, all of those are connected right to Home Assistant on a switch, on a battery backup. So there's a lot of my house from like the smart switches perspective, some of the sensors that would continue to work. Now, granted, I don't need light switches if I don't have power. But if my internet goes out, most of my stuff would continue to work, probably with a couple exceptions.
Yeah. So, power going out. Mine's all on a Docker container running off my NAS. So as long as my NAS stays up, I'm good to go.
You're
But I have
good
other
there.
problems if the NAS goes down because I also run Pi-hole in a Docker container on my NAS.
Yeah. So yeah, my scenario is very much I want this to be my hub for my entire house.
Yeah, I use it in a similar way. So I put a screenshot in the chat of just kind of like the big overview dashboard that I put together along the way for different rooms I want to be able to view and being able to control things within those various
Got it.
rooms.
Yeah, you definitely went more nerdy. Like mine is very much and mine is geared a little bit more towards the wife acceptance factor because of the way I use mine. So the screenshot I just put in Discord is my main panel that is on both of our tablets. So we have one tablet by the back door of our house where we used to have an alarm panel. And then we have another tablet in our bedroom where we used to have an alarm panel. And the way I have mine set up is all of these, if your home is wired for an alarm, there's actually power going to that alarm panel from wherever your alarm is wired into. So all of my tablets are powered off of USB-C via a low power, the 5-volt 2 amp connection that is actually coming from where all of our alarms are centrally wired into. And then I put this panel on those two tablets in those two locations so we can turn off lights, we can turn on sprinklers. I mean, the kids use it to see the weather. I have a weather radar map on there. The doorbell is on our panels. So if someone comes and rings the doorbell, the kids know, hey, I can go run and look at the tablet and actually see who's standing at the door, versus like running to the door and yelling, who is it? Which kind of gives away the fact that somebody's home at least.
A little bit.
But that's where I went with my panels. And I've created a few other ones that I use for myself. But that's kind of the route I went with Home Assistant and tying all those different devices in. But then to your point, these same switches for lights, for sprinklers, for the shades in our house that go up and down, I can also control all of those from my Stream Deck. And I started playing with sensors. Not all the sensors work, but if you connect your phone or your tablets or any of those, you actually have sensors in there for like your phone battery and your iPad battery. And there are a slew of sensors, to your point, that you can connect in Home Assistant and actually watch all of these different things through Home Assistant that maybe you couldn't do with one of the Amazon, Google, Smart Things, Wink, one of those.
Yeah. So I started down a path of thinking this is going to be just for smart devices in my home. And then it kind of became a little bit more because, simple things like, oh, great, I can see the weather with the weather forecast and have that side by side with the weather projection that's coming out of my sprinklers. So I can see like, hey, into the future, when should I be turning this on, turning it off if I want to do it manually? But there's all these integrations for other things that aren't necessarily smart home, but you really might want to be able to just see what's going on and control them. So I'm a big Plex user, and there's a Plex integration. And if you turn on the Plex integration, when somebody's watching something on the Plex server, I can actually see like, oh, hey, the kids are out in the living room. They're watching the Plex server. Here's the user that's logged in. Here's what they're watching. And if I want them to get off the TV, I don't even have to get up and walk out there. I can just hit the pause button straight from Home Assistant. And, I put together like a little dashboard, like you said, just for myself, like, hey, I'm going to run this from my phone or from my iPad. And it's going to be kind of a dedicated view just for me to be able to do things like that. You can also control Xboxes and all those kinds of things. So I've got it set up so that I can remote control my Xbox, like, hey, boot it up and turn it on ahead of time. So if it has to download any updates, it'll go ahead and get all that stuff into where it needs to be.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like. You mentioned some of those. It'll also do Roku's. It's supposed to do Apple TVs. My Apple TVs haven't always worked that well with with Home Assistant. It also, I don't know if I can't remember what NAS you have. I think I have a Synology NAS. It pulls in for my Synology NAS. I was just looking. 59 different entities, so I can actually monitor like drive health of all the drives in my NAS through that. Fan speeds, I can't even remember what all. I should go look and see. CPU loads, when it was last booted, disk temperatures, cached memory. I was just kind of flipping through here. Yeah, there's a bunch of different sensor temperatures in the NAS. But I can watch all of those different details about my NAS right in Home Assistant as well.
Now you've got me looking. I didn't even think about doing the NAS,
you didn't
but
even
it
think
turns
about
out
watching your NAS.
Yeah, so that would actually be an interesting one. Space continues to be an issue on the NAS, just as life continues to go on. I need more terabytes all the time on that thing. Yeah. So it's been really kind of fun to go down that path and configure some of this stuff. There were a couple of things I think that got me. When you go out and you watch YouTube videos or you just pull up like articles on Home Assistant, everybody's stuff always looks super crisp, right? If you showed me your picture of your dashboard, I would go like, that's awesome. It does that out of the box. And the answer is like, no, it really doesn't do that out of the box. There's probably a little bit of work that you have to put into it. Like to me, the power in this stuff is being able to put the integrations in and then being able to put this UI on top of it that makes it friendly and easy to use. But building out that UI was really just horrible. Like it was it was not fun in any way, shape, or form. So I think a couple of things. If you go down the path of installing Home Assistant, if anybody has access to a NAS or you just want to kind of run it locally in a VM, or you have an extra Raspberry Pi around and you want to kick the tires and try it out, this has been one of the more fun, like geeky smart home things that I've done in a while. Like it was super frustrating, but also made me feel like, okay, good, I'm doing something that's in my domain and my wheelhouse, and like it's kind of fun to play around with this and put this together. So once you get it installed, the very first thing that you should do is go and install the Home Assistant community store, which is Hacks, and just get that out of the way. So there's this thing out there. It's super easy to get on board with. You just go to hacks, HACS .xyz, and you do that, and then Hacks gives you access to all of these cool integrations, like kind of extra integrations, particularly front-end integrations, like all the pretty layouts and the weather cards and all those kinds of things. So one of the things you'll run into with Home Assistant is there's this thing called Lovelace, which is kind of what all the dashboards are built on by default. And Lovelace is a hot piece of garbage. Like it's very limited in what it does. You want to be able to do things like, hey, I want to configure a new dashboard and I want it to be in a grid with 10 columns and I want each column to be 200 pixels. Like, Yeah, not going to happen with Lovelace, but you can go out and you can install these extra integrations, which are basically just like JavaScript integrations that sit on the front end, and you control them with YAML, and then they just do all the rendering and all the things for you. So the Home Assistant part, I think getting it installed is the easy part. Like you pick, hey, am I going to do Raspberry Pi? Am I going to do Docker? Like you said, that depends a little bit on, maybe what you want to do with it. But from there, like the next step is building out that first dashboard. And I wouldn't recommend anybody go down the path of trying to build a default dashboard. Like just go out and install a couple integrations that'll make your life easier. So the first one is Layout Card, which is this awesome grid-based thing. Basically, like I said, you can come in and you can create a new dashboard and you can say, hey, this dashboard has 4 columns and each column is an equal width of 300 pixels. And then that can be like the dashboard that goes on your tablet because your dashboard is 1200 pixels wide and you'll kind of be off to the races and running. The other thing that you should do is you should install a front-end integration, which is called Mushroom. And that brings you these things called mushroom cards. And mushroom cards are just way prettier than all the default built-in cards along the way. Like, you install this thing, you hook it up to your smart stuff, and then you go to like the overview or like whatever the default dashboard is. And it's just a bunch of check boxes and it looks like garbage. But if you spend probably, I don't know, I probably spent about 4 hours on a bunch of different dashboards, kind of like playing around and moving things around and getting used to it. I could probably create a new one pretty easily in like 30 minutes now if I really had to spin up a new one and get it moving around to wherever it needs to be.
I'm trying to think what I installed through. So this is one thing for me. Sometimes the UI is not always straightforward. Like where I can never figure out how to see what I installed through Hacks.
Hacks is rough. So if you go into Hacks and then integrations and scroll all the way to the bottom, it'll show you what you've installed there. So I only have I only have 2 integrations in Hacks. I have Hacks itself, which is its own integration, and then I have some my Arlo cameras needed a plugin that was in Hacks because it's not from the kind of mainline Home Assistant repo. Everything else that I do in Hacks is a front end thing, and front end things are all just about the way cards display and look. So each one of these things that you see on a dashboard, which is like a button to turn a light on or a slider for controlling dimming on a light, that's all rendered in a card. And I think this is where I was really impressed by it, was you have all this flexibility when it comes to bringing in all these default cards. Like if you look at your your Alexa app and you're like, okay, great, I would really like that weather tile to look differently. You can't do anything with it. Same thing in HomeKit or Google Home. Like you're locked into that ecosystem. And this was, I could make it look however I wanted. I could put a background on it. Like if I wanted to have, each dashboard with a picture of the room that it's actually in behind it, I could do all that stuff and just make it look however I wanted to. And that was the really like powerful part to me, was having these kind of different integrations or different ways to do things, right? Like, one of the really fun ones is Mushroom has a card for lights where you can always have the dimmer slider visible. So if you're used to maybe like HomeKit or Google Home or things like that, typically when you click on a light, it pops up another window and then you have to slide your finger up and down to do it. In my Home Assistant dashboards, the sliders are always visible. They're always right there. So I just tap the light to turn it on and off. I control what that action is. And then the sliders just right there. Like it's just a quality of life improvement that I don't need to click on 8 things to get it done.
I have not used Mushroom. I'm installing Mushroom Better Sliders right now.
So Mushroom's really cool. If you look at the screenshot that I put in the chat for like my overview dashboard, like it's got all these like little cards where you can just pull in entity information. So that's all just chips. So they're called Mushroom chips. Or you can see like I have a section for my rooms. So each one of those is an entity Mushroom card. So it's just a straight entity card like you would have. Like, hey, pull in a sensor. So I had it pull in like the temperature sensors for those those rooms. But because the cards are adaptable, when you click on that room, like say you click on my living room, it takes you to a subview dashboard, which then has all the devices in that room. And then it's got a nice big back button so you can kind of go back to the overview dashboard. So for all that stuff, like when you're in my living room, I want to be able to control the Plex server and my Xbox, but I don't always want to see those things. So that's the other thing, is you can control all that navigation and just kind of get things to where they're a little more user friendly. Which was something that like I definitely needed to be able to throw this on a tablet and, you know, get my wife to be able to use it.
Yeah, I haven't played with Mushroom. I'm gonna have to go do that. So I found a different one. I wonder if it's this. Wonder what the difference is. I found Mushroom dash better sliders, but it wasn't just Mushroom by itself.
Mushroom comes with its own set of sliders in it, so you might want to just try those and see. But the cool thing is, like, it's just an installed away from you. Like, you can go into hacks and it's, you know, it's all a GUI if you want it to be a GUI, which I highly recommend because YAML is freaking horrible. You know, you just click add this thing and it refreshes your web browser and then boom, you're done. Like, you just go add that new integration and you're off to the races.
Yeah, there's also some nice add-ons that you've installed. Have you gone and played with the add-ons that you can install yet?
So this is a big difference between Raspberry Pi and Docker installations is I don't have an add-on store in mine.
Oh, so in my add-on store, I have a couple installed. One, there's an SSH add-on, so I can SSH and like configure stuff via SSH. I don't use that one a ton. The one I use all the time is someone actually wrote a add-on for Visual Studio Code, and I think they maybe ran into some copyright stuff because now it's called Studio Code Server, but it's essentially Visual Studio in the browser running as an add-on to Home Assistant. So when I need to go reconfigure YAML or reconfigure files, I can essentially open up Visual Studio in the browser right within Home Assistant and go tweak code on those files.
So here, hold on. I got a tip for you. So in the Hacks store, there's an integration called config. Hold on. I got to blur some stuff in here because it has like my longitude and latitude in it and somebody might figure out where I live. Let's see. What else do I need to blur? Does this have any passwords? No, I think that'll be okay. But whatever. I'll blur some more in here just in case, because I don't know what I'm going to expose or what I'm not. But if you install this thing called config, you don't need an SSH add-on or anything else like that. You just get a new item in your kind of sidebar, which is config, and then all your YAML, so your configuration YAML, and then all your sub YAMLs for, you know, your sensors or your groups or your scripts, even your themes, you can just all do them right from within the web browser there. You don't need Visual Studio or anything else. So the reason that I don't miss add-ons is, from everything I've seen, add-ons are basically just more Docker containers. Like, you can think of them as just containerized apps that are now going to run alongside your Home Assistant installation. So for most of the things that add-ons give you, it's not, the nicety of it is there's a one-click button within the Home Assistant interface to go say, hey, go install this add-on. If you want to do like MQ for message queues or like Rabbit or things like that, there's a one-click button to go ahead and do it. But you can always just go configure that service yourself, because all that stuff it's just really a Docker container at the end of the day.
Container.
Yep. So you can always go spin up those containers on your own and get them to where they need to be. But I highly recommend that config add-in too. Like, that was a huge quality of life thing, because before that I was either SSHing to my NAS or going into the NAS web interface and using like a text editor on there, and that was not fun to have to hop back and forth, save, add. So now you can just edit all the YAML from right within the web interface.
Yeah, I'll go look at that. That's a lot like what the Studio Code Server add-on does, only it gives you, so I get all that YAML, but then I also get one more pane to the left where you can browse through all the different files and see the whole file structure and all that, and modify the various files.
You can do that in config too, yeah.
In the config somewhere too, okay.
Yep. The only thing that you can't do from config is create a new file. But once you have kind of the set ready to go, it's not too bad to do.
Got it. I can't get to mine right now because I installed Mushroom and now Home Assistant needs a reboot. And I'm waiting for it to reboot.
So if you do config, it's a card, so it just goes on its own dashboard. So it's basically a little bit of YAML that goes onto its own dashboard and gets itself running. So here, I'll put the YAML in the chat for you if you want to try config, because it's just go create a new dashboard and pop that YAML in there and you'll be able to
pop that right in the dashboard.
Yep.
The other thing I've done with mine, I don't know if you've played with this, Scott. This is part of my Zigbee thing, and I put a screenshot of this in the chat as well, is I can also do energy monitoring in Home Assistant. So I have smart light switches, and those smart light switches have a sensor for the energy that is essentially going through the light switch. So in the dashboard that I posted, you can see that today in particular, the boys apparently left their bedroom light on because their bedroom has used more energy than any other light in our house today.
As it does, yes.
Yeah, so that's another nice one. I can't remember. I know you can do different energy monitoring as well with various platforms and different devices, but for me too, having this just built right into the light switches, as I'm putting all these light switches in, I can go add them to my energy dashboard, and now I can start charging my kids for leaving their lights on because I know exactly how many kilowatt hours they used in their bedroom.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to do it. So some like my Casa outlets come with that monitoring built in. I think Eve has some Thread devices that come with that all built in as well. So it becomes one of these things like you almost. I wish you didn't have to be so premeditated about it, like when you buy it, but you can totally go down that path and kind of make it all work.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else you ran into? Adam was asking. So I'm going to ask you this question because I'm curious. And Adam asked it in the Discord chat. Do you put all of the smart device, Home Assistant networked devices on their own segmented network?
I do. So I run a separate VLAN for my smart devices. And because most smart devices don't run on a 5 gigahertz network, I have a dedicated 2.4 gigahertz network for them running as well. So if you come into my house, there's kind of, Scott's Geeky Wi-Fi, and then there's Scott's Geeky Wi-Fi _IoT, which is what all my IoT devices join and add on to. And I found that just to kind of be the easiest way to do it. Like there's just a ton of like smart home stuff is garbage, right? Like it is the internet of garbage when it comes to that, and stuff is insecure. Stuff does not like 5 gigahertz. Stuff typically doesn't like modern Wi-Fi authentication protocols. Like you're never going to do WPA3 on a smart device, like let alone your HP. Like in my case, I've got an HP printer that's like 5 years old sitting next to me. That thing only does WPA. Like, yeah, all that stuff is like segmented off in its own area, and I live a much better life that way. Most modern, from what I've seen, most modern routers include things like Eeros have this. Eeros have a button that says like, "Hey, turn off 5 gigahertz for 5 minutes so I can go join this device to my network." Like, I don't even want to have to mess with that stuff or remember that the button's there. I just go like, "Ooh, it's a smart device. Join it to this network over here." It's on its own subnet. It's all static IP'd into its own, DHCP range. So I just know what each thing is, and it all just kind of works for me that way.
Yeah, I have a network. I have not started moving stuff over yet. It has been on my very long list of things to do. I'm curious with yours. Like, this is one thing I've started thinking about. One, it's a lot of ports. So I could put it on a separate VLAN, like the tablets that are controlling the smart home, some of that. But then when I start monitoring things like printers and controlling the Roku devices from these and wanting my iPhone to communicate with all my home assistant stuff and all of that, it's a lot of, like, I feel like you start opening up those networks so they can communicate seamlessly with each other anyways. Granted, you don't have to have every port open and they're not all on the same network, but for me, when I started segmenting stuff out, it started turning into a lot of different ports and protocols to figure out, so that certain devices that stay on my home network, my phone, my laptop, my printer, my NAS, my Unify stuff, and then my IoT network, and yeah, the getting everything to communicate properly the way I wanted to started seeming like a lot of work.
So I think it comes back to kind of how we provisioned our smart homes, and that they're a little bit different in that you have this dependency on smart things and Zigbee. Again, most of my devices already come with other cloud services that are actually kind of the command and control centers for them. So all I really need to do is have that tablet be able to talk to Home Assistant or be able to talk to HomeKit. Like, and that's easy, right? It's all command and control in the cloud. I don't have anything that has a dependency on running itself off of Home Assistant or off of Homebridge or anything like that along the way.
Got it. So you're kind of essentially proxying everything through the internet. Your smart home devices are connected to the internet from their VLAN. Your other stuff is connected to the internet from the other VLAN, and they both, as long as they can both communicate with the internet, most of the time you're fine.
Yes, but I think like it's not a conscientious decision that I made. I think it's more a byproduct of when I set out to do all the smart home stuff. Like, I started with HomeKit land, so I needed everything to talk to HomeKit, which really meant that everything was basically a command and control in the cloud. If I'd started out like you and command and control running locally, like, I think that would have been a different story. I think we both ended up in similar places as far as like how we interact with it and what we do with it. But the general approach and how those things landed and made it into our homes is vastly different.
Right. And for me, having that IoT network, I'd really have to sit down and figure out. And I've started doing some of this because I have 3 different networks. I have a work network, a network that all the family stuff is on, and then I do have that IoT network that I want to start moving stuff over to. So I've already gone down that route for some things like the printer. What ports do I need open so that I can print from either network and have the printer on one network? Or I had some Chromecasts for a little bit. How can I actually cast from my laptop on the work network to a Chromecast sitting on a family network? Now, again, I could say, well, I need to move that Chromecast or that Roku to the IoT network and then open up those ports so that my computer can cast to Roku or to Chromecast on another network. But it is some work to go down and figure out. And there's a lot of people that have documented what different ports and protocols all these things use. But that's where some of I've gotten stuck, and it's like, I don't have 8 hours to go move all my devices and then go in and figure out all the ports that need to be open and then go in and reconfigure all my firewalls so that the work network can communicate with smart home. The home network can communicate with smart home. Sometimes the work network may need to get to something on the home network. The home network never needs to get to anything on the work network. And then my wife said, don't ever let anything happen to you, because if something does, our house is going to take over the world and I'm not going to know how to stop it.
The worries about Skynet are totally valid and real there. So I hear that same thing as well. I think like there's a bunch of different approaches you can take with it. Like there's the over the top, there's the more midline base approach. I think in general, if you can go down the path of at least having your devices on a separate subnet, kind of segment them out that way, just so they're like logically controlled. Like, I probably have 80 to 90 different things that are just talking to the network. Like, it's way easier to have those in their own space where I can kind of control them and see what's on there and what's going on. The other thing is, over time, I've found, like, I want the ability to block things like outgoing internet for some devices, right? I just want to be able to stop my smart TV from reaching out to the internet every 10 seconds and saying like, hey, ping Samsung with, what this person is watching, kind of thing. It's not fundamental to the performance of the device. So if I don't need to do that, then I don't do that. So I control a little bit of it myself.
Yes. Adam was saying he can barely get his wife to use a password manager. And Adam, I feel your pain. I am the same way. Scott,
one password all the way.
Talking about this? Were you and I talking about getting our wives to use password managers, or was I talking about that with somebody else?
So I've gotten my wife on the password manager train. We can talk about that one sometime too. Maybe we'll come back and visit that one in a month or so. So
yes.
But yeah. Thanks for talking about smart home stuff today. I unfortunately have to drop and get on with the rest of my day.
You have your meeting coming up. All right. Yes. Go to your meeting. Thanks, Scott. It was fun. We'll talk to you next week.
Great. Thanks, Ben.